Hey art nerds! Happy holidays and Merry Christmas! Today we're painting a gingerbread boy and his gingerbread cookie, and this is the fifth Paperchild activity that I've shared with you guys. I hope you guys have been enjoying all of the other ones. Your halls are starting to get decked with tiny little Lilliputians hiding around the house, excited for Christmas. So this was the last Paperchild we painted, and this is the Paperchild we're going to be painting today. It's Tanner from my comic 7-inch Kara hanging out with an adorable gingerbread Tanner. Now, I don't know about you guys, but my favorite holiday cookie has to be ginger snaps. I love ginger snaps. If you guys are not familiar with the Paperchild concept, it's a way to take your 2D art into the 3D world. And it doesn't have to be with my characters or my line art provided in the description down below. It can be with your own original characters. I've got lots of Paperchild assembly and design tutorials here on the channel. I'll link them down in the description below in case you want to get creative and make your own. And if you do make your own, or if you color mine and share them, if you put them up in your house, send me a photo. I would love to see it. I bet it's absolutely adorable. So I have some straightforward watercolor tutorials where I explain how I watercolor these Paperchild illustrations. And for the past 2 videos, I've actually been sharing some of my own history with Christmas and stories from my own Christmas past. So you absolutely don't have to watercolor this if you don't want to. I recommend you print it out on a heavier paper like cardstock or 90-pound watercolor paper or Bristol paper or mixed media paper, you know, whatever you've got handy. If you don't have any of those, Walmart will have most of those, so I've got you covered. And you can color this with whatever you want to color it with. If you're using a toner printer, you can color it with watercolor or alcohol markers. And if you do color with alcohol markers, I would love to see it because I bet those super vibrant colors would just be so cute with these. I am coloring these with watercolors, and I'm using the Core Mini palette. This is a watercolor palette that I've used in the past, and I really like it. So I've attached my watercolor illustration, or my soon-to-be watercolor illustration, to a piece of scrap chipboard. You can just use the back of a sketchbook. That'll work really well. And I'm using low-tack blue painter's tape. But to remove even more of the tack and make sure it doesn't rip my paper, I put it on my arm first and I let the dead skin cells kind of remove some of that adhesiveness. I know that's super gross, but it works really well. So I'm starting out with our gingerbread cookie, and I've mixed burnt sienna, burnt umber, and a little bit of magenta and pyrrole orange and a little bit of alizarin crimson to get this really warm, rich red. Now it's really important to me that I capture that cookie texture, and I'll explain how I do that a little bit later on in this tutorial. So like I mentioned a little bit earlier, I've shared some of my own Christmas traditions from my own childhood, but I want to hear what y'all's Christmas traditions are. I just got married this year and we're starting a new family, so I'm looking for fun, easy Christmas activities that we can do together, or that when we have kids, we can share them with our kids and kind of create our own Christmas traditions. Like I mentioned in my other two videos, once my grandfather died, my family kind of petered out when it came to Christmas, and in fact, the last couple of Christmases, my mom and my aunt just slept through Christmas Eve. That is a huge bummer. I don't want to do that. I don't want my kids to have to live with that. So I'm on the lookout for some fun Christmas activities that we can do kind of in the 2 weeks before Christmas. So let me know what you guys do with your families. I'm creating these Paperchild activities just to kind of help add to that Christmas creativity. You know, you've got gingerbread houses, you've got garlands made of crepe paper or garlands made out of like rings of colored paper in red and green. You've got popcorn balls and strings of popcorn, although that definitely invites the roaches, which down here in Louisiana, you don't want to give them an invitation. They've probably already let themselves into the house. You've got decorating the tree and stuffing your stockings. There we go. You've got hot cocoa by the fire if it gets cold enough. Doesn't always get cold enough down here. We've had some 70-degree Christmases before. You've got Christmas dinners of all shapes and sizes. But, you know, I'm kind of looking for something else, something a little more artsy, something a little more creative. And I thought creating some new activities, something that you can color, cut out, and assemble could be a great way to add to the family Christmas, something that you can do together. So I used the same color that I mixed up for my gingerbread boy to paint, I guess it's lederhosen? I don't know. It's kind of long. When it comes to inventing Lilliputian clothing, I take inspiration from all sorts of sources, from colonial and pioneer living, so J.A.S. Townsend is a channel we watch a lot, to survivalist living, to other countries and their traditional folkwear. So now that I've painted our gingerbread boys, I'm going to paint the whites of Tanner's eyes. And to do that, I'm starting with a very light mix of ultramarine blue. And I'm using that same color for his shirt. So he's wearing a clean white shirt underneath his gingerbread lederhosen. Now for a Lilliputian, white is quite a daring color because A, it's very prone to getting dirty, especially if you're a messenger like Tanner here. B, it's pretty noticeable running through the grass, a little white stripe. You're definitely going to notice it. Browns and greens, generally more popular. And also, a lot of Lilliputian clothing is made secondhand, so it comes originally from human clothing. So either this fabric was scavenged while it was still clean and hadn't yet been thrown away, or one of the weavers in the area created this. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, I had a sneeze there. Oh, I do apologize. I had a sneeze there and it turned into a cough. One of the local weavers might have made this using spider silk or dandelion fluff or even cotton or wool. So to add in more shadows, I'm adding in a little bit more ultramarine blue. It's been mixed a little bit thicker. So next I'm painting in Tanner's hair, and I've started with the cool yellow in the core mini palette mixed with just a little bit of the quinacridone gold. Since I don't want to start with just full gold color, I kind of want to work up to that. And this is actually the second Paperchild video that Tanner's in. He's also in the Elves on the Shelves video, and he's going to show up in a third video where he makes an appearance as the Nutcracker. So I hope you guys have been enjoying these. I hope you guys have been enjoying our chats, and I hope I've sparked your imagination and inspiration for what you can do with your own art. So now that Tanner's had a chance to dry, I'm going in with a second layer of our gingerbread color mix. And I'm still just kind of building up the forms and building up the shapes. So I haven't yet gotten to the cookie texture that I'm kind of holding out for. That's the whole reason I'm doing this video as a tutorial, in fact, and not as a vlog. Since, like I said earlier, we've already got a couple tutorials. And once you understand the basics of this kind of watercolor, it doesn't really get super complicated. But I did want to explain a few more techniques and a few more tricks that I think you guys will really enjoy. So I've already started doing some of the cookie texture, and it's basically a stippling effect. I zoomed in a bit so you guys can see it a bit better, and I apologize for my camera doing what my camera's gonna do. I have gotten a bit better with it, and generally I just try to cut out when it gets all out of focus like that. It wants to focus on the brush rather than on the painting, which is just like, grrr, camera. But I wanted to keep this segment so you guys could see what I meant with the stippling effect. So I'm basically kind of bouncing the brush along the paper, leaving lots of that initial color still visible under the second layer, but I'm also filling in large areas as well. So one of the big things about watercolor, especially if you live in a really humid area, is you really want to have a lot of patience. This video has been time-lapsed several times to bring it down under 30 minutes. I think it's in the 22-minute range. And each time, cut the initial paint time by half. So I think I spent about 3 hours, maybe 4 hours painting this, and that's including the dry times kind of. And often when I'm doing these Paperchild illustrations, I'll let it dry overnight before I add the gouache highlights or before I remove it. So patience is really key when you're doing watercolor, and that's going to give you the best success. People I know who really struggle with watercolor have one of three, maybe one of four main problems. They're either painting on cheap paper, which, to be fair, I'm painting on Canson XL today, which is a pretty cheap paper. Two, they're painting with cheap paints, and for me, that's one of the no-goes. There's only so cheap I'll work. Now, one of my favorite paint sets is the MozArt Komorebi set, which is like 40 pans for about $20, which I know for some of you is whoo, very rich. But some of you guys who are more familiar with my professional paint reviews are like, whoa, that's a good deal. So I actually really like that palette, and I think it's a great affordable palette. I'm also a big fan of the Sakura Koi watercolor palettes, although I know those are kind of hit or miss for other artists. So I try not to go too cheap. Me personally, I could not paint something like this with, say, Crayola washable watercolors. I have tried, I have failed, I just can't do it. I know some artists who can paint this and even better with Crayola washables. I have no idea how they're doing it. It must be some kind of magic, and they sure are not telling me. So it is a mystery, but I am curious about that because I do so often work with younger artists or artists on a budget. It would be really nice to know those skills. Now, on that note, I can do a little bit of magic using Crayola washable super tips, and I'll link some of those videos down in the description below to get you guys inspired. But Crayola washable watercolors, not so much. One of the other of the 4 problems is they're painting with cheap brushes. Now, you can use synthetic brushes, and synthetic brushes are often very affordable compared to their natural hair counterparts, but you can't go too cheap. I would say Dollar Tree is not going to do it for you. I have reviewed watercolor brushes that I purchased at Dollar Tree, and they had me pulling my hair out. And then the 4th problem is just not patient enough, not letting things dry, not letting the pigment settle. You're gonna end up with so many problems if you're just not patient enough. And in terms of, you know, dollars and cents, patience is the cheapest of the 4 assets that I mentioned. So pays to be patient. And that's why I always point out when I'm doing these time-lapse videos that, hey, I'm time-lapsing this. Partially because I want to be honest with you guys. I want to be fair, and I want you guys to succeed. I want you to make art you like. I don't want to set this impossible standard and then you compare yourself to it and you're like, well, shoot, I can't paint that in 5 minutes. That's not my goal. My goal is to give you guys inspiration and to teach you guys some tricks and techniques and to give you guys at least reviews about possible materials that you might really enjoy painting or drawing or coloring with. I want y'all to succeed because when y'all succeed, then I've kind of shared my legacy. I have all this art education and I want to put it to good use, and hoarding it isn't really helping me, so I want to share it with you guys. So for the cookie, because that's the whole reason we're doing a tutorial part of this, for the cookie, I continually mixed in more burnt sienna or more burnt umber to get that darker color. Also mixing in more magenta or alizarin crimson, just kind of depending on where we're going. You can also allow it to evaporate so that way it gets more intense and it gets darker. And I just continue that stippling kind of cookie crumbly technique. And it doesn't look like 100% like a gingerbread cookie, but it definitely has that cookie cakey kind of look, and that's really what I was going for. I wanted it to have some texture, and I wanted the gingerbread cookie tanner to not look exactly like Tanner. I didn't want it to look like weird, like twinsies, you know what I mean? I wanted it to look like, oh, it's a gingerbread cookie that's supposed to look like Tanner. How cute. Speaking of gingerbread, I have tutorials where I show you how to draw an adorable gingerbread girl, as well as a really cute gingerbread house. And I'll also have follow-up tutorials where I show you guys how to color those. So if you're looking forward to that, let me know down in the comments below. I want to hear from you guys. I also want to remind you guys that in part 2 of this tutorial, I'll show you guys how to cut it out, assemble it, and pose it. So keep an eye out for that. If you've never made your own paper children, that's something you're definitely not going to want to miss. But again, I have links down in the description where I have different Paperchild tutorials that'll show you how to color, cut, and assemble them. So if you are super excited and you already want to make your own like yesterday, check the description below for that. So the main thing about watercolor, at least for me, is I like to work with a lot of layers. So like I said, patience is really important because those prior layers have to dry out first. But I slowly develop my color, slowly develop my forms over time. So that also means paying attention to light and shadow, where the light is hitting objects, where the shadows are going to be. And it also requires paying attention to texture and shape. So my little gingerbread guy wasn't quite dark enough, so I'm adding a wash just all over it, and that's going to kind of help unify the texture with the actual form. So there was just too much contrast between the texture and the initial color, the initial local color of the cookie. So by adding a wash on top of it, it's gonna kind of help marry the two together so they work better together. And this is one of the reasons I can't really work with really cheap watercolors. I do way too many glazes and too much layering, and my watercolor would turn to mud on me. So what's your favorite thing to draw over the Christmas holidays? Do you like to draw your ideal Christmas tree with all the pretty ornaments? Or maybe you like to draw all the presents you're gonna get that year underneath the tree. I know when I was younger and I used to get time off for Christmas, I would spend that time drawing comics, basically non-stop, and dreaming about the art supply presents that I might get that year. Now that every day is drawing day and I'm no longer in school and I draw for a living, I spend my Christmas time drawing Christmas activities for you guys to enjoy. And you know, I've really been having a lot of fun with it. This is the first year that I've actually gotten to do Christmas art. In past years, I was so busy packing up to fly back to Louisiana and I couldn't bring my art supplies. And then when I got here, I was just so tapped out from traveling that I didn't have any inspiration. I know, hard to believe that I didn't really have time to do Christmas art. This is the first year I actually get to spend Christmas with you guys, sharing some Christmas themed art and tutorials. And I guess I kind of went about it in a big way because this is the 5th Paperchild out of I think 13 total Christmas Paperchild designs. I just really went whole hog. Plus I have tutorials on how to draw gingerbread houses and gingerbread people, poinsettias, as well as how to color Christmas girls and a basket full of Christmas kittens. I just went really Christmas this year in a way I normally don't. Maybe it's because 2020 has just been a whoo boy of a year, a whole heck of a lot of a year. And Christmas is just an opportunity to kind of sit back and do something really holly jolly and be grateful for the friends and family that you do have. So now that I've finished painting this, I'm going to add some highlights using white gouache. And this is particularly important on the icing and on the candies on our little gingerbread tanner since we want them to have that glossy, sugary glow. So we're wrapping up and putting the finishing touches on this illustration. I just want to remind you guys that there is a free printable down in the description below. I will also have a free scan that you can print of this, so a colored scan that you can print of this for the second part of this tutorial in case you don't feel like coloring, you just want to cut and assemble the cuteness. Again though, if you guys make your own paper children or if you print out and assemble my paper children, I would love to see photos of them in your home. You can tag me at Nattosoup, Nattosoup, on Twitter, on Facebook, or on Instagram. I would love to see what you make. So once it had a chance to fully dry, so, the next morning, I carefully removed the blue painter's tape by pulling it away at a 90-degree angle. That way it doesn't tear into our illustration. So that about wraps up our 5th Paperchild design, a gingerbread boy and his Lilliputian friend. If you guys want to get to know Tanner a little bit better, you can get to know him through my comic 7-Inch Kara. You can read the first 7 chapters for free at 7inchkara.com. Or you can purchase the first volume from my shop or pre-order the second volume. I'll put links to those down in the description as well. So I've been having a lot of fun coloring these paper children with you guys. I hope you guys have been enjoying it too. If you want to hang out some more, I do live streams on Friday nights and Monday afternoons. Friday nights are art-related workshops, and Monday afternoons are just chill streams where we kind of put together a kit together. Honestly, it's just a chance to hang out, play around with something artsy and craftsy, and just kind of chill out and relax a little bit. You can find out information about when those are going to happen over on the community tab. If you're not yet a subscriber, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell notification so YouTube lets you know when we update. Happy holidays, guys!